Welcome back to the channel. If you've ever felt like the invisible child in your own family, this story will hit home. Please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us bring more real, raw stories to you. I remember the exact shade of blue on my son's birthday shirt. It was the color of a summer sky right before a storm rolls in, bright, almost defiantly cheerful, but with a heaviness underneath that you can't quite name. Liam had picked it out himself 3 weeks ago. He'd stood in front of the mirror in our tiny apartment, turning left and right, his small hands smoothing the fabric over his chest. "Mom," he'd said, his eyes shining with that pure, unfiltered joy that only an 8-year-old can possess, "this is going to be the best birthday ever. Grandma and Grandpa are going to love it." I had smiled then, because that's what mothers do. We smile even when our stomachs are knotting with old, familiar dread. We smile even when we know, deep down, that the people we're supposed to trust most have a long, painful history of making us feel small. I had kissed his forehead and told him he was right. It was going to be a wonderful day. I wish I could go back to that moment. I wish I could scoop up that blue shirt boy and take him to the park instead, or to the cheap pizza buffet he actually loved, or anywhere that wasn't my parents' sprawling suburban house with its manicured lawn and the heavy front door that always felt like it was closing on something rather than opening to welcome. But I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that the storm wasn't coming. It had already arrived, and it had been brewing for 34 years. My name is Clara, and for most of my life, I have been the ghost in my own family. The one who is seen but never really looked at. The one who received the hand-me-downs while my younger sister, Melissa, got the new dresses. The one whose science fair trophies were acknowledged with a nod before the conversation turned to Melissa's latest cheerleading accomplishment. The one whose wedding was planned in 3 months because my parents didn't want to make a big fuss, while Melissa's wedding the following year was a 300-guest extravaganza with a live band and an ice sculpture. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself that every family had its favorites, and that I was lucky to have parents at all. My husband, David, would listen to me vent late at night, his hand rubbing circles on my back, and he would say the same thing every time. "Why do we keep going back, Clara? They're not going to change." And I would give him the same answer. Because they're my parents. Because Liam loves them. Because maybe this time will be different. It never was. But hope is a stubborn weed, and it grows back even when you think you've pulled it out by the roots. The morning of Liam's birthday, I woke up at 6. I had baked the cake the night before, a 2-layer chocolate monstrosity with buttercream frosting and rainbow sprinkles. Liam had helped me stir the batter, his tongue poking out in concentration as he cracked eggs, getting shell fragments into the bowl that I fished out when he wasn't looking. We had laughed together, and for a few hours, I had forgotten about everything else. David was already at work. He's a firefighter, and his shifts are unpredictable. He had hugged Liam goodbye the night before, promising to call as soon as he could. "You and your mom are going to have a great day," he had said, ruffling Liam's hair. "And when I get home tonight, we'll have our own celebration. With extra ice cream." Liam had beamed. The good kind? The one with the cookie dough chunks. The very best kind, David had confirmed. Now, as I carefully placed the cake into a plastic carrier, I felt a flicker of optimism. Maybe this year would be different. My parents had actually called to confirm the time. My mother had asked what Liam wanted for dinner, hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, because he's 8 and has refined tastes. She had even mentioned buying balloons. Balloons. That felt like progress. Liam came bounding into the kitchen, already dressed in his blue shirt and his favorite jeans with the hole in the knee. His brown hair was still wet from the shower, and he smelled like the strawberry shampoo I'd bought on sale. "Are we ready?" he asked, practically vibrating with excitement. "Can we go now? Can we?" I laughed and knelt down to straighten his collar. "Almost, sweetheart. We need to put the cake in the car and get your present from us." His eyes went wide. "Present? I get presents at Grandma's and from you. You get presents everywhere today, buddy. It's your day." I handed him a small, wrapped box. Inside was a watch, a simple, blue Timex with a nylon strap. He had been asking for a watch for months, wanting to feel grown up like his dad. He tore the paper off with the enthusiasm of a tiny tornado, and when he saw what it was, he gasped. A watch. Mom, this is so cool. I can tell time now. I can know when it's dinner and when it's bedtime and when it's time to leave Grandma's, I added softly, though I didn't let him hear that part. He strapped it on immediately, holding his wrist up to show me. How do I look? Like the most handsome 8-year-old in the whole world, I said, and I meant it. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. It was a route I had driven 1,000 times, past the same strip malls, the same overpass, the same sign for the dairy farm that had been there since I was a kid. Liam chattered the whole way, pointing out trucks and counting cows and asking if Grandma and Grandpa would remember that he didn't like green beans. I answered on autopilot, my mind already rehearsing the script for the day. Smile. Be polite. Don't mention the past. Don't bring up the time they forgot my birthday when I turned 16. Don't think about the Christmas when Melissa got a car and I got a sweater. The past was the past. Today was about Liam. We pulled into the driveway at exactly 11:30. My parents' house is a large colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch. It's the kind of house that looks like it belongs on a postcard, but postcards don't show what happens inside. There were already 3 other cars in the driveway, my sister Melissa's silver SUV, her husband Todd's pickup truck, and a minivan I didn't recognize. My heart sank slightly. I had hoped it would just be us, the grandparents, and maybe a quiet afternoon. But Melissa's family was here, and apparently someone else too. Cousins. Liam shouted, unbuckling his seatbelt before I had even put the car in park. Mom, can I run ahead? Please? I want to show Ethan my watch. Ethan was Melissa's oldest, a year older than Liam. They were close, in the way that cousins can be when their mothers pretend everything is fine. Wait for me, I said, grabbing the cake carrier and my purse. We go in together. He was already halfway up the front walk, his little legs pumping. I hurried after him, the cake bumping against my hip, my flip-flops slapping the concrete. The front door was slightly ajar, and I could hear music playing inside, some upbeat pop song that my mother loved. Through the screen door, I could see balloons. Lots of balloons. Red, blue, yellow, green, a whole bouquet of them tied to the staircase railing. See? I told myself. They did get balloons. This is going to be fine. Liam pushed open the screen door and stepped inside. I was right behind him, a smile already fixed on my face. Happy birthday, I started to say, but the words died in my throat. The living room was full of people. My mother, her hair freshly curled, wearing a floral dress I'd never seen before. My father, in his favorite plaid shirt, a glass of iced tea in his hand. My sister Melissa, holding her youngest, a toddler named Ava, on her hip. Melissa's husband Todd, already reaching for a chip from a bowl on the coffee table. And my sister's other 2 children, Ethan, age 9, and Lily, age 6, both of them surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbons. Ethan was holding a new video game. Lily was clutching a stuffed unicorn the size of a small dog. Both of them were wearing birthday hats. Liam stopped so suddenly that I nearly ran into him. His little body went rigid. I watched his head turn, taking in the scene, the balloons, the presents, the hats, the way my mother was beaming down at Ethan and Lily. Then his gaze found the cake on the dining room table. It was a store-bought sheet cake, white with pink roses, and written in frosting across the top were 2 names, Ethan and Lily. Not Liam. My son's birthday. And the cake said Ethan and Lily. Grandma? Liam's voice was small, confused. It's my birthday today. My mother looked up, and for a moment, just a split second, I saw something flash across her face. Annoyance? Guilt? It was gone before I could name it, replaced by a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, sweetheart, of course it is. We're just having a little celebration for your cousins too. Their school play was yesterday, and they did such a wonderful job. We wanted to surprise them with some treats. Treats. Balloons. Presents. A cake with their names on it. On my son's birthday. Liam didn't say anything. He just stood there, his small hands hanging at his sides, the blue watch on his wrist suddenly looking like a cheap consolation prize. I watched his smile, That bright, hopeful smile he'd worn all morning began to fade. It didn't disappear all at once. It crumbled slowly, like a sand castle being eaten by the tide. First the corners of his mouth dropped. Then the light in his eyes dimmed. Then his shoulders curved inward, making him look smaller than he had just seconds before. My mother didn't seem to notice. She was already turning back to Ethan and Lily, asking Lily if she wanted another piece of cake. Eat up, sweet pea. You need your energy for the bounce house later. Bounce house. They had rented a bounce house for a school play celebration on the day we had been told was Liam's birthday party. I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the quiet, final breaking of a thread that had been fraying for 34 years. All those birthdays I had spent watching Melissa blow out candles. All those holidays where my stocking was conspicuously thinner. All those times my mother had said, "You're so sensitive, Clara," or my father had said, "Can't you just be happy for your sister?" I looked down at Liam. He was staring at the floor, at a spot on the beige carpet, his lower lip trembling. He wasn't crying yet, but he was close. I knew that look. It was the look of a child who has learned, far too young, that he doesn't matter. And I knew in that moment that I would rather burn every bridge I had than let my son feel that way for one more second. "Liam," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "Come here, baby." He walked to me slowly, like a sleepwalker. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. He didn't hug me back. He just stood there, limp and defeated, while I whispered into his hair. "I'm sorry. Mommy's so sorry. We're leaving." "Okay. We're leaving right now." He nodded against my shoulder. A small, jerky movement. I stood up, keeping one hand on his back. The room had gone quiet. My mother was looking at us, her mouth slightly open. My father was examining his iced tea as if it held the secrets of the universe. Melissa had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting Ava to her other hip and avoiding my eyes. "Clara," my mother said, her voice pitched in that placating tone she used when she wanted to make me seem unreasonable. "Don't make a scene. It's just a few balloons." The kids were excited. "We can still sing to Liam." "Sing to him," I repeated. The words came out flat, hollow. "You didn't even get him a card. You didn't get him a present. You didn't get him a cake with his name on it." "On his birthday, Mom." "His birthday. We were going to," my father started. "No," I cut him off. For the first time in my life, I cut my father off. "You weren't. You were never going to. Because you don't see him. You don't see any of us. You never have." My mother blinked. Then she said the words that would echo in my head for months afterward, the words that would become the foundation of every decision I made from that day forward. "You're overreacting." Just like that. For words. "You're overreacting." As if my son's crushed spirit was a minor inconvenience. As if my 34 years of swallowing disappointment were just a failure to be chill. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the careful makeup, the expensive haircut, the cross around her neck that she wore to church every Sunday. And I realized with the clarity of absolute certainty that she would never understand. She would never apologize. She would never look at me or my son and see anything other than supporting characters in Melissa's story. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay." I turned to the dining room table and picked up the cake carrier I had set down when we walked in. Liam's cake. The chocolate monstrosity with the rainbow sprinkles. The cake we had made together, laughing and getting batter on our shirts. I held it against my chest like a shield. Then I took Liam's hand. His fingers were cold. "We won't be back," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Ever. My mother's face did something complicated. A twitch near her eye, a tightening of her jaw. But she didn't apologize. She didn't ask us to stay. She just said, "You'll regret this, Clara. Family is family." I didn't answer. I walked out the front door, my son's hand in mine, his cake tucked under my arm. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't slam the door. I just left, stepping over the balloons that had drifted onto the porch, walking past the bounce house that was inflating in the backyard, a bright yellow castle that was meant for Ethan and Lily, not for my blue shirt boy. The drive home was silent. Liam stared out the window, his forehead pressed against the glass, his watch catching the sunlight. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was a cold, hard knot in my chest that wouldn't let anything in or out. When we got home, I put the cake on the kitchen counter. Then I knelt down in front of Liam and took his face in my hands. "Look at me," I said softly. He raised his eyes. They were red-rimmed, but the tears hadn't fallen. "What happened today was not your fault. Do you understand me? It was never about you. It was about them. And I am so sorry that I didn't protect you from it sooner." His lip wobbled. "Why don't they like me, Mom?" That was the question. The one I had been asking myself since I was his age. Why don't they like me? What did I do wrong? How can I be better, smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more successful, less of everything that I am? "It's not that they don't like you, sweetheart," I said, and I hated myself a little for the lie. "It's that they don't know how to love the way we need them to. And that's their loss, not ours." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully understand. How could he? He was 8. All he knew was that his grandparents had chosen someone else on his birthday. That was a wound that would take a long time to heal. David came home that night to find us on the couch, the half-eaten cake on the coffee table, Liam asleep with his head in my lap. I told him everything. Every word, every look, every painful detail. He listened without interrupting, his jaw set, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. When I finished, he let out a long, slow breath. "I've been saying it for years, Clara. But I know you had to see it for yourself." He reached over and put his hand on top of mine. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. I said we'd never go back. And I meant it. But they're still my parents. There's a part of me that keeps hoping. "Hope is not a plan," David said gently. "And your son's heart is not a bargaining chip." He was right. Of course he was right. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls and text messages. My mother called twice. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was breezy, almost cheerful. "Clara, we need to talk about what happened. You left your good serving bowl here. Why don't you come by on Saturday and we can have a nice lunch?" The second message, 3 days later, was different. Her voice was tighter, edged with frustration. "Clara, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Your father and I love Liam. We just made a little mistake. Families forgive each other. Call me back." Melissa texted, "Hey, I know you're upset. Mom feels bad. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. My father, who rarely called anyone, left a message that simply said, "Clara, your mother is heartbroken. Do the right thing." The right thing. According to them, the right thing was to pretend nothing had happened. To show up at the next family gathering with a smile and a casserole, to let Liam be overlooked again and again, to swallow my pain for the sake of family unity. The right thing was to accept that Melissa and her children would always come first, and to be grateful for whatever scraps fell my way. I was done with scraps. The silence stretched into a month. Then 2. I unfollowed my parents on social media. I stopped asking about family news. I focused on my own little family, David, Liam, and me. We started new traditions. Friday night pizza and a movie. Sunday morning pancakes with chocolate chips in the shape of smiley faces. A small birthday party for Liam at the local trampoline park. Just a few of his friends from school. No grandparents, no cousins, no drama. He had fun. He really did. But I caught him looking at the door sometimes, as if expecting someone to walk through it. And I knew that he was still hurting. So was I. The worst part wasn't the anger. The worst part was the grief. I was grieving parents who were still alive. I was grieving the childhood I never had, the love I was never given, the family I pretended to have for so many years. I would be fine for days, and then something small would trigger me, a mother and daughter laughing in a grocery store, a commercial about grandparents, a song that my mother used to hum. And the grief would wash over me like a wave, cold and relentless. David was my anchor. He never pushed me to reconcile or to cut them off permanently. He just held me when I cried and reminded me that I was breaking a cycle. "Liam will never have to feel the way you felt," he would say. "That's what matters." But one night, about 3 months after the birthday incident, I got a call that I couldn't ignore. It was my Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister, the one who had always been kind to me, who had slipped me money when I was in college and sent me Christmas presents even when my parents forgot. "Clara," she said, her voice heavy. "I know things are hard right now, but your mother is in the hospital. She had a minor stroke. She's going to be okay, but she's asking for you." I felt the world tilt. A stroke. My mother. The woman who had hurt me so many times was still my mother. And she was asking for me. What do I do? I whispered to David after I hung up. He looked at me for a long time. "That's not my decision, Clara. That's yours. But whatever you choose, I'll support you." I thought about Liam. I thought about the way his smile had faded. I thought about the blue shirt and the watch and the cake with someone else's name on it. I thought about all the years I had been told I was overreacting, too sensitive, too difficult. And I thought about the little girl I used to be, the one who just wanted her mom to look at her the way she looked at Melissa. I decided to go to the hospital. Not for my mother. Not for my father. Not for family pressure. For me. So that I could look myself in the mirror and know that I had taken the high road, even when it was paved with broken glass. David offered to come with me, but I said no. This was something I had to do alone. I left Liam with a babysitter, a sweet teenager from down the street who he adored, and drove to the hospital in the same car I had driven on that terrible birthday morning. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I walked down the corridor to my mother's room, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Through the window in the door, I could see her lying in the bed, looking smaller than I remembered. My father was in a chair beside her, holding her hand. Melissa was there too, sitting on the edge of the bed, stroking my mother's hair. It was a tableau of family love. And for a moment, I felt like an intruder. I knocked softly and pushed open the door. My mother's eyes found mine immediately. They were watery, vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. "Clara," she said. Her voice was weaker than usual, a little slurred from the stroke. "You came." Melissa looked up at me, and I saw something in her expression that I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Relief? Resentment? Maybe all three. My father just nodded at me, a silent acknowledgement that I was there. "Hi, Mom," I said. I didn't go any closer. I stood just inside the doorway, my arms crossed over my chest. "Come here," she said, patting the bed. "Come sit with me." I hesitated. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. But I made myself walk to the bed and sit on the edge, keeping a careful distance. My mother reached out and took my hand. Her skin was papery and cold. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the birthday. For everything." I waited for more. For an explanation. For acknowledgement of the years of favoritism, the small cruelties, the way she had made me feel like I was always less than. But she didn't say anything else. She just looked at me with those watery eyes, expecting my forgiveness to be automatic, like a vending machine that dispenses grace when you push the right button. "Mom," I said slowly, "I need you to understand something. It wasn't just the birthday. It was every birthday, every Christmas, every family dinner, every time you compared me to Melissa, every time you told me I was overreacting when I was just asking to be seen." My mother's face tightened. "I did the best I could, Clara. I'm not perfect." "I'm not asking for perfect," I said. "I'm asking for accountability. I'm asking for you to look at what you did, what you've always done, and say, I was wrong. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. I was wrong." The room was silent. My father stared at the floor. Melissa looked like she wanted to disappear. My mother's lips pressed together in that familiar, stubborn line. "You're still overreacting," she said quietly. And there it was. The same 4 words. The same dismissal. The same refusal to see me as anything other than a problem to be managed. I stood up. My hand slipped out of hers. "Then there's nothing more to say." "Clara, wait," Melissa said, standing up too. "She's sick. Can't we just move past this?" "Move past what?" I asked, turning to face her. "Move past the fact that your kids got a bounce house and a cake and presents on my son's birthday? Move past the fact that my son stood there with nothing while yours were celebrated? Move past the fact that you didn't say a single word to defend him. Melissa's face flushed. I didn't know Mom was going to do that. I thought it was just a little get-together for the play. I didn't realize it was going to be on Liam's day. But when you got there and you saw the balloons and the cake with your kids' names on it, you didn't think to say, "Hey, isn't today Liam's birthday?" You didn't think to share the attention? You just let it happen. She looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I walked out of the hospital room without looking back. My father called my name once, but I didn't stop. I walked down the corridor, past the nurse's station, out the automatic doors, and into the parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if I hadn't felt so hollow inside. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, my hands on the steering wheel, my forehead resting on my hands. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was in that cold, numb place where emotions go when they've been battered too many times. My phone buzzed. A text from David. How did it go? I typed back, the same. It will always be the same. His response came immediately. Then let it be the same without you. Come home. We love you. I drove home in the fading light, and when I walked through the door, Liam ran to me and wrapped his arms around my legs. Mommy, I missed you. Can we watch a movie? Can we make popcorn? I scooped him up, burying my face in his hair. He smelled like soap and sunshine and everything good in the world. Absolutely, baby. Anything you want. That night, as we sat on the couch with a big bowl of popcorn and an animated movie about talking animals, I made a silent vow. My son would never have to fight for love. He would never have to earn his place at the table. He would never be told he was too sensitive or too much or not enough. I would break this cycle if it killed me. And for a while, things were quiet. My parents didn't call again. Melissa sent a few half-hearted texts that I left on read. The extended family seemed to have taken sides, most of them with my parents, because that's what families do. They circle the wagons around the loudest voices, the ones who control the holidays and the inheritances and the narrative. I became the villain of the story. The one who overreacted. The one who broke the family. The one who kept her son away from his grandparents over a little misunderstanding. I heard the whispers through cousins and aunts. Clara was always so dramatic. She never could let things go. Poor Linda and Bob, they just wanted to celebrate their grandkids' play, and Clara ruined everything. It hurt. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. But I held my ground. I blocked numbers when I had to. I muted group chats. I stopped attending family gatherings, even the ones that didn't involve my parents. I built a new village, friends from work, neighbors, other parents from Liam's school. People who saw me and my son for who we were, not for who they wanted us to be. David was my rock. He never wavered, never suggested that I was being too harsh. He had seen the damage firsthand, year after year. He had watched me cry after every family holiday, had held me while I sobbed about feeling invisible. He knew that this wasn't about one birthday. It was about a lifetime of small cuts that had finally bled me dry. Liam adjusted. Children are resilient, but they also remember. He stopped asking about Grandma and Grandpa after a few months. He stopped looking at the door. He started talking about our new traditions with excitement instead of wistfulness. And one day, out of the blue, he said to me, "Mom, I like our family. Just us and Dad. It's better. Better." That one word from his mouth was worth more than 1,000 apologies from my mother. But healing isn't linear. There were setbacks. There were days when I missed my parents with a physical ache, not the parents they were, but the parents I wished they could be. There were days when I wondered if I had done the right thing, if maybe I should have tried harder, if maybe I was the problem after all. Therapy helped. I started seeing a counselor named Dr. Evelyn, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. She helped me untangle the knots of my childhood, to see the patterns for what they were. Favoritism is a form of emotional neglect, she told me one afternoon. It teaches the unfavored child that they are inherently less valuable. And that lesson doesn't go away just because you grow up. It follows you into every relationship, every job, every parenting decision. The fact that you recognized it and chose to protect your son, that's not overreacting. That's brave. Brave. I hadn't felt brave. I felt broken. But maybe broken things could be mended in a new shape, stronger at the cracks. I started writing. Not for publication, not for anyone but myself. I wrote about my childhood, about the small moments of rejection that I had stuffed down for decades. I wrote about the time I came home with a perfect report card and my mother said, "That's nice, but Melissa made the cheerleading squad." I wrote about the time my father forgot to pick me up from soccer practice because he was at Melissa's piano recital. I wrote about the empty chair at my college graduation because my parents were at Melissa's spring formal. Writing was a form of exorcism. Each memory I put on the page lost a little of its power over me. David encouraged me to share my writing with him, and he listened without judgment. He told me I should write a blog or a book or something that might help other people who were going through the same thing. I laughed it off at first. Who would want to read about my dysfunctional family? But the idea took root. One night, about 8 months after the birthday incident, I got an unexpected visitor. It was my Aunt Patricia. She showed up at my door with a casserole and a bottle of wine, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even invite her in. "I'm sorry for staying silent all these years. I saw what your mother did. I saw how she treated you. And I never said anything because I didn't want to cause trouble. But you were just a child, Clara. You deserved someone to speak up for you." I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table, and she told me things I hadn't known. About my mother's own childhood, about the favoritism she had experienced from her own parents. About how my grandmother had always preferred my mother's younger sister, and how my mother had sworn she would never do the same to her own children. But she did, Patricia said. She just flipped the script. She made Melissa the favorite instead of you. And she never even saw it. That's the tragedy of it. She genuinely believes she's a good mother. How can she not see it? I asked. How can she look at what happened on Liam's birthday and think I'm the one in the wrong? Because admitting she's wrong would mean admitting she's been wrong for 34 years. That's too much for most people to bear. So they rewrite the story. In her version, you're the difficult one. You're the one who overreacts. It's the only way she can live with herself. Patricia stayed for 3 hours. We talked about the past, about the future, about the possibility of reconciliation. She didn't push me to forgive my mother. She just said, "Whatever you decide, I'll be in your corner. You and Liam deserve that." After she left, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about my mother, lying in her hospital bed, still unwilling to admit she had done anything wrong. I thought about my father, always the enabler, always the silent one who let my mother run the show. I thought about Melissa, who had benefited from the favoritism her whole life and had never once said, "This isn't fair to Clara." And I thought about Liam, about the blue shirt, about the fading smile, about the watch that was supposed to make him feel grown up but couldn't protect him from the adults who were supposed to love him. I made a decision. It wasn't a decision about my parents. It was a decision about myself. I was going to stop waiting for an apology that would never come. I was going to stop hoping for a mother who would never change. I was going to grieve the family I never had and then let them go. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just with acceptance. The next morning, I wrote a letter to my parents. I didn't send it. I wrote it for me. Dear Mom and Dad, I love you. That will never change. But I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. The way you've treated me my whole life, the favoritism, the dismissals, the constant feeling of being less than has caused me real, lasting pain. And I see you doing the same thing to my son. I can't allow that. Not anymore. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm just telling you who I am now, a mother who will protect her child, even from the people she loves. If someday you're willing to acknowledge what happened and take responsibility for it, I'll be open to talking. But I won't hold my breath. And I won't put my family through any more hurt while I wait. I wish you well. I truly do. But we won't be coming back. Clara. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't need to send it. The act of writing it was enough. Time passed. Seasons changed. Liam turned 9, then 10. We had small parties at home, with David's parents sometimes joining us from out of state. They were good people, warm and uncomplicated, and they loved Liam without reservation. They didn't understand why we didn't see my side of the family, but they didn't push. They just showed up with presents and hugs and left the past where it belonged. I learned to be happy. Not the brittle, performative happiness I had worn like armor at family gatherings. Real happiness. The kind that comes from quiet mornings and shared laughter and the knowledge that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. I started a blog. I called it The Unfavorite Child. I wrote anonymously at first, sharing my story and the lessons I had learned. To my surprise, people responded. Hundreds of comments poured in from others who had grown up as the overlooked sibling, the scapegoat, the one who was always told they were too sensitive. Thank you for making me feel less alone. I cut off my parents 2 years ago, and I still struggle with guilt. Your words help. How do you explain to your children why their grandparents don't love them the same? I answered as best I could. I shared the resources that had helped me, books on narcissistic parents, articles about family estrangement, podcasts about breaking generational cycles. I became an accidental advocate for people who had been silenced by the myth of, but family is family. And slowly, the grief began to transform. It became less of a weight and more of a scar, tender sometimes, but no longer raw. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in October, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Clara. The voice was familiar, though I hadn't heard it in years. It was my father. Dad. My voice was flat, guarded. Your mother is sick again. Not the stroke. Something else. The doctors say it's serious. He paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. She's asking for you. And for Liam. She wants to see you both. I felt the old pull. The instinct to drop everything and run to them, to prove that I was a good daughter, to earn the love that should have been given freely. But I was different now. I had boundaries. I had a family of my own. I had a son to protect. What does she want to say to us? I asked. I don't know. She just keeps asking for you. Dad, I need you to be honest with me. Has she changed? Is she willing to acknowledge what happened? There was a long silence. Then my father said something I never expected to hear. She's been going to therapy. For the past 6 months. She never told you because she was ashamed. She knows she messed up, Clara. She knows. I sat down heavily on the couch. My father, the enabler, the silent one, was telling me that my mother had been in therapy. That she was ashamed. That she knew. Why no? I whispered. Because she's scared. Not of dying. Of dying without making it right. I thought about Liam. About the blue shirt. About the watch. About the cake with someone else's name on it. I thought about all the years of pain, all the therapy sessions, all the nights I had cried myself to sleep. And I thought about forgiveness, not as a get-out-of-jail-free card for the person who hurt you, but as a release for yourself. I'll come, I said slowly. But not with Liam. Not yet. I need to see her first. I need to know if she's real. My father agreed. We set a time for the following Saturday. The week that followed was agonizing. I alternated between hope and dread. David listened to me talk it out, offering his steady presence without trying to solve anything. Liam could sense that something was happening, but I didn't tell him the details. I didn't want to get his hopes up. On Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house. The same house. The same driveway. The same front door that had closed on my son's joy. But this time, I wasn't the same person. My father opened the door. He looked older, thinner, his hair completely gray. He didn't say anything. He just stepped aside and let me in. My mother was in the living room, sitting in her favorite armchair. She was wrapped in a blanket, and there was an oxygen tank beside her. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken. But when she saw me, she didn't blink. She didn't say, "You're overreacting." She just looked at me, and then she started to cry. "I'm sorry," she said. The words came out broken, fractured by sobs. "I'm so sorry, Clara. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything." I stood there frozen. I had waited decades to hear those words. And now that they were here, I didn't know what to do with them. "I was jealous of you," she continued, wiping her eyes with a trembling hand. "That's the truth. I was jealous of you because you were everything I wasn't. You were smart and strong and you didn't need anyone. And Melissa needed me. She needed me, and that made me feel important. So I poured everything into her. And I left you to fend for yourself. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I know it's not an excuse, she went on. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Liam. And I know you might never forgive me. But I had to tell you the truth. I had to say it out loud before she stopped, unable to finish the sentence. I walked over to her chair and knelt down in front of her. Up close, I could see the lines on her face, the yellowing of her skin. She was dying. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but soon. Why didn't you say this before? I asked. Why did you wait until now? Because I was a coward, she said. Because admitting I was wrong meant admitting I was a bad mother. And I couldn't live with that. But then I got sick, and I realized I couldn't live with the silence either. I thought about Dr. Evelyn's words. Admitting she's wrong would mean admitting she's been wrong for 34 years. That's too much for most people to bear. You hurt me, I said. You hurt me in ways I'm still discovering. And you hurt my son. That's not something I can just forget. I'm not asking you to forget, she said. I'm asking you to let me try to make it right. I don't have much time left, Clara. Please. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something I had never seen before. Vulnerability. Fear. Regret. Not the performative regret of someone who just wants to smooth things over, but the raw, ugly, painful regret of someone who has finally looked in the mirror and hated what they saw. I can't promise anything, I said finally. But I'll listen. I'll try. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. That's all I ask. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her own childhood, about the way her mother had always preferred her younger sister. She told me about the day she decided she would never make her own children feel that way, and how she had ended up doing exactly that, just in a different form. She told me about the therapy sessions, the painful realizations, the sleepless nights. She didn't try to justify herself. She didn't say, I did the best I could. She just owned it. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every time she had chosen Melissa over me. And when she was done, she looked at me and said, what can I do to make it up to Liam? That was the question that mattered. He's 10 now, I said. He remembers that birthday. He remembers how it felt. If you want to apologize to him, you have to do it in a way that puts him first. No excuses. No justifications. Just, I was wrong and I'm sorry. I can do that, she said. If he'll let me. I wasn't sure if Liam would want to see her. He had built his own defenses over the past 2 years. But I also knew that he had a tender heart and that he missed the grandparents he had once loved. I'll talk to him, I said. No promises. On the drive home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, and it never would be. But because the truth had finally been spoken. The silence had been broken. And whatever happened next, I knew I had done the right thing by showing up. That night, I sat down with Liam. I told him that Grandma was very sick, that she had said some important things, that she wanted to apologize to him. Do you want to see her? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, will she have balloons? My heart cracked. No, buddy. No balloons. Just her. And maybe Grandpa. Will she say sorry? Yes, she will. He nodded slowly. Okay, but if she doesn't mean it, we leave. Right? Right, I said, pulling him into a hug. We always leave. The visit was scheduled for the following Sunday. My mother was too weak to travel, so we went to her. Liam wore a different blue shirt, a new one, no holes, no memories attached. David came with us, a quiet sentinel at my side. When we walked into the house, everything was different. No balloons. No bounce house. No cake with someone else's name on it. Just my mother in her armchair, my father standing behind her, and a small gift-wrapped box on the coffee table. Liam held my hand tightly. I could feel his pulse racing. My mother looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. Liam, she said softly, I owe you an apology. A big one. What I did on your birthday was cruel and wrong. I made you feel like you didn't matter. But you do matter. You matter so much. Liam didn't say anything. He just stared at her, his face unreadable. I'm not going to make excuses, she continued. I was a bad grandma that day. And I've been a bad grandma for a long time. I've played favorites, and that's not fair. It was never fair. And I am so sorry. She picked up the box from the coffee table and held it out to him. This isn't to make up for what I did. Nothing can do that. But it's a birthday present. A real one. For your 8th birthday that I ruined. I know it's 2 years late, but I hope you'll take it. Liam looked at me. I nodded. He let go of my hand and walked slowly toward my mother. He took the box and opened it. Inside was a silver locket, the kind that opens up to hold a picture. He pried it open and found a tiny photo of me, him, and David, taken at his 7th birthday party, before everything fell apart. I found it on your mom's social media, my mother said. I wanted you to know that I see your family now. All of you. Liam closed the locket and clutched it in his fist. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just said, "Thank you," in a small, quiet voice. And then he did something I didn't expect. He walked over to my mother and gave her a hug. A real hug, not a grudging one. He wrapped his arms around her thin shoulders and held on. My mother sobbed. My father wiped his eyes. David put his hand on my back. I stood there, watching my son offer grace to the woman who had hurt him. And I realized that he was braver than I had ever been. He wasn't holding a grudge. He wasn't waiting for proof. He was just letting go. That day didn't fix everything. My mother died 3 months later, peacefully in her sleep. My father followed her a year after that, broken-hearted, unable to live without her. Melissa and I have a cordial relationship now, though we'll never be close. The old patterns run too deep. But Liam? Liam is 14 now. He's tall and lanky and has a deep voice that still cracks sometimes. He wears the locket on special occasions, tucked under his shirt. And he remembers that birthday, the bad one and the good one that came 2 years later. He told me once, "Mom, I learned something from all of that. People can change. But you don't have to wait around for them to do it. You can love them from a distance. You can forgive them without forgetting. And you can always leave if they hurt you again." Out of the mouths of babes. I still write my blog. I still talk to people who are struggling with family estrangement, favoritism, the pain of being the unfavorite child. I tell them my story, not as a blueprint, but as proof that there's life after the breaking. And every year on Liam's birthday, we bake a chocolate cake with rainbow sprinkles. We invite our friends, our chosen family. We fill the house with balloons, red, blue, yellow, green, and we eat too much ice cream and we laugh until our sides hurt. No one is overreacting. No one is invisible. Everyone is seen. That's what family is supposed to be. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own family storm, know this. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are not the problem. The people who hurt you and refuse to take responsibility, they are the problem. And you have every right to protect yourself and your children, even if it means walking away. Please like, subscribe, and share this story if it resonated with you. Someone out there needs to hear that it's okay to leave. That it's okay to choose yourself. That it's okay to bake your own cake and fill your own balloons and create a family that sees you. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of each other.